I hope you're getting a handle on the style that I'm going to be using for the rest of the semester. You can see what's going on. I've got a handout that I'm going through, and I'm sort of reading it to you, but I'm going really slowly because I'm stopping every couple of seconds to talk about something big. That's what the whole class is going to look like. I'm going to be doing this with Plato, and there will be parts that I'll hit in Plato and in this handout that I'm going to rush past. I'm going to be like, that's not important right now. I don't want to talk. You've already seen me do that. I'm like, I mentioned in there, you got to put the page number of the book in parentheses after the quote. I don't want to talk about that right now. That's for later. Um, so this is basically the structure of the class, is we read things together, and I go through it, and I stop and explain it and talk about it and do sidebars, and your role is to ask me questions and make comments on the discussion board so we can all kind of figure it out together. It's hard to teach when you can't see students, because usually when I'm looking at a room full of students, I can see if someone is confused by the look on their face. Now I can't see your faces, so the only way I'm going to know how you're feeling or what you're thinking is if you tell me in words. So you are going to have to put this down in the sort of comments. And so if you're confused about any of this, please let me know. Right now, by the way, I'm sure you've noticed there's not like a ton of places for you to make comments. I'm not asking you a lot of questions right now. I will when we get to Plato, and there are good philosophy questions to ask you. But right now, this is just you're not making choices yet. I'm just teaching you the moves of the game. One of the moves of the game is quote people, probably in every paragraph. Another rule of the game is write your essay like the person who's reading it is not a member of our class and has never seen this book before. And another tip is to always I gotta say the name of the guy and the name of him. Okay, so fine. So let's keep going. So with quotes, one of the key things with quotes, and there's a whole thing too, you want to make sure that what you're quoting is worth quoting in a college paper. I'm going to help you with that. I realize this says see research tips in the section of the syllabus, but I'll be providing you with a handout and a presentation about that later. But there are ways to check to make sure if a person is trustworthy. You want to basically, it's real simple. You want to quote experts. And so you got to find people who are experts. And how do you know they're experts? Well, what school did they go to? What do they do for a living? Have they published in reputable, trustworthy places? It's a whole bunch of stuff. Okay. The next part of quoting, super, super important. So the next thing you're going to do when you quote is you are going to put the quote in your own words. And you are going to say, in other words. That's a massively important thing. Students love to skip that one. Do not skip that one. I know why they skip it. I figured I've cracked the code. Students skip. So you say, in Plato, ancient Greek philosopher Plato says in his book Phaedrus, quote, blah, 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 blah. Then your next sentence should be, in other words, and then you put that idea in your own words. The students skip it. They skip this step all the time. Really, every time you quote, you're going to need to explain what the hell that quote is about. Why? Well, it's a couple of reasons, but one of the big ones is that you only are going to understand something if you put it in your own words. That's how you understand things. I hate to put it like this, but it's a little bit like translation. You're essentially translating it. Plato had an idea, and he put it in Plato's words. Now you need to read his words, understand his idea, and then put his idea in your words. Just like if somebody said something in Spanish, right? That you would, and if you had trouble with Spanish, you would translate it into another language, maybe English, and then you could say, "Is this what you mean?" And you could repeat it back to them in English, and they would say, "Ah, yes, that's what I meant." It's the way you guarantee it's the way you guarantee you're listening and you're paying attention and you're understanding. So when and it seems strange, but really, is it that strange? I mean, Spanish is a different language than English, but it has a lot of similarities. I'm sure you've noticed words in Spanish that are the same or similar to words in English. And they're people in different countries across space speak in different languages, and we translate those languages. What we're doing with Plato is we're translating less across space and more across time. Plato lived 2,500 years ago. That's a long time ago, and he lived in another place. So you're translating these ideas into your sort of modern day life. You're going to need to say it the way a modern person would say it. That's especially true of the Plato, because as I mentioned last time, the translation for the Plato is like from 1860, which means it's like it was written during like the Civil War or something. So the translation is old-fashioned. So you're going to need to put it in modern day English. And the reason students skip this step, I totally understand why they skip it, and I get it. Because sometimes what will happen, and you'll see this with paper 1 and 2 for this class, is I'm going to give you a quote to talk about. I'm going to, when it comes time to write paper 1 and 2, I'm going to say, Plato, ancient Greek philosopher Plato says in his book Phaedrus, blah, 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 blah. Explain what he means by this and tell me, do you agree or disagree? So in paper 1 and 2, I'm going to give you the Plato quote. The problem is going to be, is that you're not, if you don't understand it, you're going to want to skip the in your words part, because when you have to put someone's idea into your own words, it shows that whether you understood them or not. Students skip that because what they want to do is they think they'll probably be fine for a grade if they just quote Plato and then say whatever they want. Because sometimes this is a very common thing with students. Students quote things they do not understand, and then they try to write a paper based off of a quote or a paragraph or whatever. They try to write a paragraph. They quote Plato. They don't really understand Plato, and they try to write a paragraph based off of Plato where they don't understand what they just read. The in other words part is when you get to put Plato in your words. That's the part where you show that you've understood it. Students skip that step because it's a lot of work. That's the step where you have to understand what you're reading, and reading can be very difficult. Plato is quite difficult. And so students skip it because they don't understand what they're quoting, but they figure they'll just say something and they'll probably pass. Don't do that. If you quote something, try to understand it first. If you have trouble understanding it, look where, do you know all the words? Look the words up in the dictionary. Did you understand what was in the dictionary? You may need, one of the most frustrating things with the dictionary is you will look a word up and then you'll have to look another word up. I had a student years ago, we were reading a poem, and the word colossal was in the poem. And the student said, I don't know what this means. And I said, well, look it up. So the student looked it up. And I came back to him later. I said, well, did you look it up? Yeah. What does it mean? Vast. Oh, cool. Okay. I said, what does vast mean? He said, I don't know. So the problem is he looked up a word in the dictionary and he didn't understand the dictionary definition. So you may have to look up a word, and then the definition may have some words you don't know, and then you have to look up those words. One of the biggest mistakes students make, and we'll talk later when we get to dictionaries about this, one of the biggest mistakes students make with dictionaries is they look up a word in the dictionary. If your teacher tells you, look words up in dictionaries and write the definition down, students will look the word up in the dictionary, and then they'll write down exactly what the dictionary says. But if you don't understand what the dictionary says, it's useless. You gotta write it down the way you would explain it, right? So you probably, if you were gonna, if the word colossal, you have to look it up, but it means big. You'd probably just say big or very, very big. Huge might be a word you would use. So you might want to, you can't just write down dictionary definitions. You have to put it in your own words. Same thing with quoting philosophers. You can't just put their quote, you gotta explain what they meant by it. And that means saying their idea the way you would say it. They said it, you have to read it and find the idea, and then you have to take that idea and you have to put it in your own words. So you're essentially translating. Here's what they said, here's what they meant, here's how you would say it, right? So that's what you gotta do every time. The other thing you can do, the next step, after you quoted the thing and you explained who said the quote and where it came from, and then you put the quote in your own words, the next thing you do is you're still not done explaining that quote yet. One of the best ways to explain something is with examples. You got to put some examples down. So you quote the person, then you say, in other words, then you say, for example, and you give an example. So in the next video, I'll talk a little bit about examples. By the way, I'm not going to go this slowly through every page of this, but these are some really important sort of fundamental lessons that you're going to need right now off the bat. So we're making good progress, though. I'm pretty happy with this so far. Okay, cool. So quote, put the quote in your own quote, explain who said the quote and put their words down. Say in other words, and then say their idea the way you would say it, and then give me some examples to explain it. People need examples. All right, we'll talk about that next video.